So what is called real aperture camera. And also, right, it was also apt in a sense because I wanted to show those examples because you saw the blurring and all that happening, right? This is what a real camera will give you. It's not true that every time you end up only seeing focus scenes and all that, right? So that is why I thought you can take a look at those examples, look at how these challenges go up, and then kind of take a foot backwards, and then examine what will happen in a real aperture. Right? So this is a more realistic. So real aperture, that means involving lens. Right? So involves lens as opposed to a pinhole. As opposed to a pinhole. Okay. Of course, one reason, right, why you of course use one of the main reasons why you use a lens is because if you had simply a pinhole camera, right, and suppose you had a 3D point there, and then you have your lens here. So what will happen is, even though this guy is emitting so many rays, right, so many light rays from itself, so there is only the central ray, right, that is able to see through the center, and it is coming and hitting your image sensor there. So if you have a lens, right, we can probably gather all of this and then bring them all. Then it means that you can actually cut down on the amount of time that you need to expose your camera to this. Even here you can get enough light, but then you have to wait much more because you're not able to gather all the rays inside, right? So you'll have to wait a lot longer. And also, of course, there are so many other things, right, why you want to use a lens, but mainly because you want to gather all the light that is out there. Now, in the process, right, what really happens is, so in the process, when you start involving a lens, right, then some of those things that we have assumed till now, okay, no longer hold. In the sense that till now, right, I simply said if you have a pinhole, right, take the intensity and start to work with it. Now, which basically means that I never used this notion of something being in focus and something not being in focus, right? In those classes, I never used that. Only in these practical applications, I told you something about blurring. So a lens, right? Even if you were to assume a static world, when you have a lens, okay, then a lens brings along with it its own set of features. One is what is called really what we call is a working distance. A working distance. What that means is that when you have a lens, of course, you have a certain focal length, right, and then you will actually keep the sensor plane at some sort of a distance from the lens, and the working distance is like saying that at what object for those lens settings. So it's like this, right? So when you have a lens, you'll say that here is my image plane, and I keep my lens right there, okay. And of course, it has an aperture through which, right, all the light rays are being gathered. Now this could be a distance, okay, at which the sensor plane is from the center of the lens, and then this has a certain radius r, and then maybe and then you have a focal length and so on. So so the f, and let me call this as u, right? So this working distance means that what. Right, where should I kind of keep this object so that the object appears in focus, right? So as far as lens is concerned, it is not true that you can keep the object wherever you want and still be able to focus it. Correct. Now, each lens has its own sort of a characteristics. The other thing that it brings along with it is what is called a depth of field. A depth of field. A depth of field is the sensitivity of a lens in terms of how much would be the change in blur when there is a change in depth. For example, if you use what do you call a microscope, an optical sort of a microscope, or sort of an industrial microscope. If you use a microscope, you will see that the depth of field is in terms of microns. So if you keep a PCB or something under it, and if you're looking at the track, and even if there's a small something that you can't even see with your naked eye, but then if there is a small sort of depth change in the track, then it will immediately show up. It will show up in the fact that something will be focused and something will be blurred. So you know that, right? So you know that these two are not at the same depth anymore. Whereas if you take a regular camera and try to move around, you will see that even in your own cameras, you would have seen, right, that something appears in focus. So when you actually shoot, right, the first thing that it does is there is an autofocus mechanism, correct? And that autofocus actually assumes that when you actually click a camera, it assumes that the center of the center of the image plane, right? And whatever object lies there is what probably you're interested in, right? I mean, so for example, I won't keep a camera here if I'm interested in that boy there, right? I wouldn't. So when I keep a camera, it means that something out there is of interest to me, and therefore, right, that's called what's called a hunting. So this guy hunts. The camera hunts for a certain lens settings at which it can bring the object that it believes you are interested in focus. Okay, so again, right, so this blurring and all, it has, I think I told you this before. If not, let me tell that, right? So all of this, right? So when you talk about blur, okay, there are some people that think that it is actually a nuisance, and there are people that think it makes new sense. Okay, so it's all in the mind. Right? One guy walks away, right? Walks away from all the charm that the blur can bring to you simply because he thinks it's a nuisance. There's another guy who then makes his life out of it simply because, right, he feels that it makes new sense. Right? So I think these are important things, right? Anyway, so I'm saying so this blur, so the ability to not be able to focus all the points in a kind of a 3D world simply because they're not at the same depth, it comes at a cost. On the one hand, you might say that the cost is that I'm not able to focus everything, but on the other hand, right, you should also realize that such a thing, right, also brings with it a notion of information about the world.